Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to Past, Present, and Future of Mitchell Park and its Conservatory, the Domes. We're just giving everyone a moment to join our broadcast and then we will get started. Thank you for spending your evening with us. Right. Let's go ahead and get started. So, hello again, everyone. Welcome to Past, Present, and Future of Mitchell Park and its Conservatory, the Domes. This evening presentation with Krista Beal-Diefenbach and Melinda Myers. My name is Kelly Bolter, and I serve as the Adult Programming Coordinator at Milwaukee Public Library. Just going to share a brief bit about housekeeping, and then I'll get into introductions of our featured speakers tonight. So we will have time after the presentation for audience questions. Please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. Um, and please feel free to use the chat to tell us where you're logging in from and to chat with other people that are in the broadcast as well. I will share a link to Melinda's handout in the chat as well, and it will be emailed out with the recording link within a few days after tonight's presentation. So this is being recorded, and we will plan to email that out to everyone that has registered for this program. So I am very pleased to introduce Krista and Melinda tonight. Krista Bill-Diffenbach is an innovator and seasoned nonprofit leader who has helped transform countless nonprofit organizations. Fueled by her love of nature and mid-century architecture, Krista joined Milwaukee Domes Alliance as CEO just over 4 years ago. She is leading the team that is working to ensure our city's most iconic national landmark is here for us today and for generations to come. And we also welcome Melinda Myers, nationally known gardening expert, TV radio host, author, and columnist who has over 35 years of horticulture experience and has written over 20 gardening books, including the Midwest Gardener's Handbook. She is a columnist and contributing editor for Birds and Blooms magazine and writes a nationally syndicated garden column. She appears regularly as a guest expert on national and local television radio shows. And so now I am so pleased to hand it over to Krista to start tonight's presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. And a couple of quick thank yous. One to Milwaukee Public Library for hosting this webinar, and a special thank you to Melinda Myers for helping to coordinate the webinar, but also being such a wonderful advocate and champion for the Mitchell Park Domes. Again, I'm Krista Beal-Diefenbach. I am the CEO of the Milwaukee Domes Alliance. We are the support organization that runs half of the operations of the Mitchell Park Domes. And we are also leading the charge as we're forging a new future for the conservatory. So tonight we're going to touch on the past, the present, and the future of the domes. But before we get to the domes itself, I want to take us just a little bit back to the history of Mitchell Park. So I think a lot of people don't realize that the domes are actually the second conservatory in Mitchell Park. The first one was called the Mitchell Conservatory and stood for 57 years. It was a Victorian style conservatory, and you see that in the photos there. In there where you're like on the lower left corner, you see that conservatory, and in front of it is the sunken gardens. So those sunken gardens actually existed in the park until the 1990s. And if you're trying to figure out the vantage point here or where you are in the park, the conservatory there that you're looking at in the lower left corner, it's approximately where the tropical dome is today. So 125-year history of public gardens in Mitchell Park. But it wasn't just the indoor conservatory that was really part of this treasure. It was all of these wonderful amenities that existed in Mitchell Park. And so the lower left corner, you're seeing a postcard that's showing boat rides across the lagoon. The lagoon, when it would freeze in the winter, also hosted ice skating. So you could rent ice skates in the pavilion and take a trip across the lagoon. You're on the right side there, you can see the children's playground that used to exist. And so it really truly was this wonderful park that had, kind of almost like a nature Disneyland. And this photo here is the Stance Pavilion that existed. Also, we would host all kinds of musical performances in the park and all types of opportunities for people to connect with nature. And this is another image here of those sunken gardens. This vantage point is more from where the tropical dome is today, so looking south at Pierce Street. I mean, you see how just lovely they were, and of course, all of those amenities were removed from Mitchell Park over the years. Our organization, the Milwaukee Domes Alliance, was established actually in the 1980s, and if you put us on that timeline with the park, it was right about the time where the Milwaukee County made the very difficult decision to remove the sunken gardens. And that was because of maintenance challenges. It was just too costly. And I think many of us from Milwaukee are well aware of the fiscal challenges facing the county. And so, based on those, it was determined that we would not be able to maintain these gardens. And so my organization was started as an advocacy organization. We knew that it was only a matter of time before the domes themselves would be at risk. But let's fast forward from the 1950s to when the domes were created. So at that time, when the first conservatory was raised, there was a design competition from Milwaukee County. And the county wanted to open it up worldwide and invite architects to submit really what could only be described as a demonstration project, right? They wanted something big and bold and something to give our community pride. And from that, they selected Donald Greaves' very unique design. So this is the model, what you're looking at in the lower left corner. This is the model that he submitted as part of that design competition. And it was actually these conoidal shaped, that's the term because it's not a standard geodesic dome, it's a conoidal shaped dome. It looks more like a beehive, and he actually fashioned it off of a beehive and incorporated all sorts of nature inspired design into the domes. On the right side there, what you're looking at is the construction zone when they first started to dig the ground for the domes. I think something that's really interesting and unique, and what most people don't realize, is that when you walk into the domes, you'll notice now that it dips down in the center. And the reason why is because the domes, that dirt that the gardens are planted in, is actually Wisconsin soil. And what they did at the time was they dug it down deep to take it below the frost line so that we would not have to heat the gardens to the extent that we would otherwise. So very unique design and certainly special, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. This image here is also during construction. So you see the show dome on the left and the tropical dome there in the middle, and the sunken gardens still exist at this point in our history. This image here is the dedication with Lady Bird Johnson that happened in 1965. So they did the dedication when just the show dome itself was finished, and it was very well attended. I've actually met a few people who were at that dedication, which is really special. But again, I think what's so interesting about the domes is they were never a building, and they certainly were never even a botanical garden. It was meant to be, inspiring hope. And so if you look at the headlines from that point in our history, it's really interesting to see how they describe the domes. One of them is the world's most unusual house of glass. Another headline was a willful act of hope. And so if you think about that, the willful act of hope, we're built in the middle of an industrial valley. And at that time, we had smokestacks everywhere. We still have some smokestacks in the valley, but And back in the 60s, there were a lot more smokestacks. And from those rose these glorious glass bubbles. And, that is the start of the domes and what we all have grown to love here in our community. This is another rendering that from Donald Graves. So this was original to when he submitted the application for his design. It's fun to look at it because it looks fantastically mid-century, and you can really start to appreciate the geodet or the patterns that you're seeing there. That is a very common mid-century design style is to have the repeat of patterns. So even the wave of the front of the domes, which I call like ribbon candy, right? It kind of goes up and down, and that is it was very popular in the mid-century. So you can really appreciate that in this rendering. This photo I like to show because it's an element that no longer exists with the domes. So you see that reflection pond. There was actually one on each side of the entry walkway. So if you're thinking about walking up to the domes, today there are gardens that flank you on each side. And they're beautiful in their own right, but originally we had these reflection ponds, which are pretty spectacular because, of course, the domes themselves would be reflected down into them, causing this feeling of just expansiveness. So the domes are important. They're important internationally. So lots of reasons why they've been designated as a national treasure by the National Trust of Historic Preservation. One reason, the lead engineer who did all the structural designs, Charles Whitney, he's actually world renowned. He's taught in engineering schools across the world. It's also unique in that, we are the fifth largest indoor conservatory in the United States. I mean, we are very large. Each dome is 15,000 square feet across. Also at the center, it is 85 feet tall. So I mentioned we have this conoidal shape. It's kind of like a beehive. It allows for us to plant very large species, which is incredibly unique. This is why we needed Charles Whitney to come in and help with that design because it is one of a kind. It's the only building like this in the entire world. So there's lots of reasons why the domes are important. But to Milwaukee, I think there's a list that's a little different than what the rest of the world would see. Part of it is that intergenerational connectedness. So if you think about the domes and how many times you see grandparents taking their grandchildren, or right now is our very popular train show, so don't miss it. But it goes until March 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. But there's tons of children and families there, and you get to see this intergeneration connection that is just really special. And I like to say it's like an heirloom that families are passing from one generation to the next. It's also a point of civic pride, right? It's important in our skyline, and certainly, if you go to all of these travel destination or travel sites like TripAdvisor, you'll see the domes there as featured because it's so uniquely Milwaukee, and we certainly see that a lot in when people want to ensure that they are around for generations to come. They're a powerful tool for creating Earth ambassadors. Nothing is more effective at making people want to protect our planet than connecting them with nature. They're a place of peace and wellness. And I'm sure that for any of you who have been to the domes that you have experienced that. So I won't even have to explain what I mean by that. It is just some place that's incredibly special and finds its way into our hearts. It's also a pillar of the south side of Milwaukee. I'm very proud to say that if you do a heat map of our admissions, the folks who are coming to the domes most often are our closest neighbors. And I think that's just a wonderful, point of pride that's specific to our neighboring communities. And plus, we are an economic driver for the state. If you look at our admissions, half of the people who come to the domes are not from Milwaukee County. They're from outside of our community, and they travel an average of 200 miles to come to the domes. So if you think about us driving revenue for the state when it comes to tourism, we're certainly an important part of that picture. So I won't spend a lot of time talking about the challenges facing the Mitchell Park domes. I think this is probably the part that's received the most press. So, we certainly have our deferred maintenance issues, but probably the more complex challenge, it was the lack of amenities that would drive the revenue to create a sustainable business model. So we were in this ecosystem that we just couldn't be successful. And the organization or entity that was charged with our upkeep, Milwaukee County, was facing a fiscal crisis, right? I mean, that is just a fact. And so this is a lot of what brought us to the point where our community had to ask, are we going to have to demolish the domes? Well, I'm here to tell you that the exciting news is no, we don't have to, and we won't. We have a wonderful plan in place. And even though our ecosystem is a little complex, the plan is beautifully simple, which is important for it to be successful. So it's the product of a partnership between Milwaukee County and the Milwaukee Domes Alliance. It does address the deferred maintenance. We know that when it rains outside, it rains in the domes. We have to stop the water infiltration from impacting the concrete. So it will certainly check that box. Also, it's going to add a lot of amazing amenities and programming. I'm going to show you some highlights tonight. It transfers management of the facility to Milwaukee Domes Alliance. So I told you right now we manage about half of the operations, the other half will come over to us, and we'll be able to run the facility like a business and really be able to lean into that sustainable business model. And finally, we will be placing the domes on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's already been established that it's eligible for that um, that registration. So very quickly on the money side, because everybody always wants to know, what's this going to cost? And the phase one of the project, which, you'll see includes all of those different amenities that we're going to talk about. It's 115 million, but we're putting all sorts of resources together so that this expense doesn't unduly fall on one entity. So Milwaukee County has committed $30 million to this endeavor. They made that commitment last year, and the first $5 million appropriation is in the 2026 budget. We are raising 35 million from private philanthropy. We're also going to be leveraging tax credit financing, over $33 million from both new market and historic tax credits. And then we're bringing in some other national funding and funding from the state. You put all that together, and this plan is doable. So let me give you some of those highlights of what we're going to add and be addressing through this plan. So I mentioned that we are going to address that deferred maintenance. That includes replacing 6,500 panes of glass. So just like in our homes, we would have to replace the windows after 50 or 60 years. We do need to replace our windows, and the caulk and the seals and gaskets all get replaced. But in doing so, we protect that concrete. The concrete itself is actually in exceptional shape. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, if you think of it from, the structural integrity of the domes themselves, they are very sound, and that's because of their shape. It's interesting, but I've learned a lot about dome-shaped buildings in my last 4 years. And the domes are, they have been protected because of that unique shape. Because one of the hardest things on a building is the elements, and domes, they tend to resist water and snow loads, and wind just whips around them. And that really has protected them, and the reason why they're still in really good shape. One of the cool things of this project, though, is that once we go through that process of addressing deferred maintenance, we will see a 50% reduction in our energy usage, which is incredible. We're also going to be building many new revenue streams. One example of this is we're going to expand our gift shop by twice the current footprint. So our gift shop, I like to say, is small but mighty. It does very well, but it's also, if we have 5 or 6 guests shopping in the gift shop, it is very congested and people choose to not go in. So we want to create a more open, inviting space for our retail sales. So what you're looking at right now is the architectural rendering for the gift shop. We'll be taking over the offices next door and again expanding that considerably. What you can see in the lower right corner is the existing condition. So it's about the size of a postage stamp, but it is adorable. And I always give a great shout out to our gift shop manager because if you have not gone to our gift shop, it has the most unique items. Many of the businesses that sell items to a gift shop are local, both from the south side of Milwaukee, but also Milwaukee more broadly. We're also going to add amenities that will create a day-long destination. So right now we know that people come in and out of the domes pretty quickly, and we want them to come and enjoy their time and spend more time with us. One way we're going to do that is by adding a new cafe. So what you're looking at here is the drawing of where it's going to be located. So it's kind of tucked between the show dome and the desert dome. If you're trying to figure out where you are in this, probably most of you have not seen this space because it's back of house space. So we're going to, again, use some of that back of house space more creatively so that we can add all of these different amenities. And so let me give you a peek at what that new cafe is going to look like. And there you're seeing it. So it's a boutique cafe, meaning it's going to be small, but you'll be able to grab an espresso, a glass of wine. You can come and work from the domes, which we already do have a lot of people who come and work from the domes. So if you haven't done that before, it's a great place to work, but bring your own coffee until we reimagine them. All right. And we're also going to be adding an interactive children's garden. So this is really about enhancing the visitor experience, leaning into a really important market for us, which is families with young children. So we know 1 out of every 3 people who walk through our door have school-aged children in the home. So this is actually going to be in a fourth dome that already exists. You haven't seen it before, most likely, because it's tucked behind the domes. It's in a back of house space. It's actually used as a growing greenhouse right now. And we're going to put all these wonderful amenities in it that lean into families and giving families a place to go in the winter months. And it's going to be very nature themed. We're going to have an insectarium with live insects and an accessible play structure in the center. And it's going to be a great yes space for kids. Right now, even though we know that so many families come to the domes, we're not necessarily as child friendly as we'd like to be. You know, it's don't climb, don't touch, don't run, don't ever touch the cactus. But this will be a place, that yes space, where they'll get to do all of those things and really dig into their love of nature. And this is a rendering of what we're calling the Little Sprouts Dome, what the Little Sprouts Dome's going to look like. So you'll notice that it's a very large space. It's actually 5,000 square feet. But if you compare that to the other domes, they're 15,000 square feet. So about a third of the size, but perfect for our smallest visitors. And in the lower right corner there, you see what the existing greenhouse looks like. And phase 2 of the project, which I'm only going to touch on briefly, but it will add a new nature learning center along with a stormwater garden to the park. So you remember those photos that I showed of the sunken garden and how beautiful they were. Well, we're going to do a sunken garden 2.0, so to speak. It's a stormwater garden, so it's going to be returning that part of the park to be a wetland, which it is historically a wetland. And it's going to have lots of Wisconsin native plants. It'll have an elevated walkway through it and beautiful artwork. It'll be just open to the community so anybody can come and enjoy it, just like the sunken gardens were before they were removed in the 90s. So that what you're looking at here, that new building is a nature learning center, will add a lot of new event space as well as education space to the domes and really leans into establishing that sustainable business model. And this is one more rendering showing you from the domes level what that nature learning center will look like. So the Mitchell Park domes, as I mentioned, they were never a building, not even a botanical garden, but an expression. And I believe that the community has turned to the domes again with this sense of hope And I encourage all of you to join us and find ways to plug in and be part of this solution. It's a good plan, and we've made a lot of progress. I'm happy to answer questions toward the end of the presentation tonight. But again, I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for your interest in the Mitchell Park Domes. I will say thank you in advance for the ways that you'll find to plug in and be part of our future. Now I'll turn it over to Kelly, who will take us on the next leg of our journey.
Thank you so much, Krista, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. I mean, this really demonstrates how the domes is a feat of engineering, a national treasure, a family heirloom, and a point of civic pride, as you shared. Um, I want to point out how wonderful the chat is. Everyone is sharing where they're coming, logging in from all over the country. So as we can see, the domes really has a monumental impact for people everywhere. And also a special hello to Mark Teagues, logging in from Tucson, Arizona, previous Domes Conservatory director. Hello. So with that, I am pleased to hand it over to Melinda Myers, who will now share about the world-class plant collection that you can find at the Mitchell Park Domes. Thank you.
You'll get to see my messy desktop. Thank you, Kelly and Krista. I am so excited to be part of this vision for the domes. It's a place I've visited. I love to come and see kids, family, my grandkids, my daughter and I go and visit regularly. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what makes this a world-class plant collection. First of all, Krista had shared this vision that the county had when they decided to build the domes. And I think it summarizes and is very foresight. The foresight was incredible. Provide a public with the ultimate experience of nature in the city. So think about it. My grandkids' daughter and I went to the domes on Martin Luther King Day, a very chilly day. There were 3 parking spots left. So I felt like half of Milwaukee County realized this was a place to be. But when you think about all the variety of plants in here throughout the season, they keep changing. And the space, as Krista mentioned, is very unique and it brings the plants to the people. So you can see plants from parts of the world you may never get to visit and experience, which is very exciting as a gardener or a traveler. She mentioned the unique shape, and the Canary Island palm is over 60 years old, and it's the height, the size, and the height of the dome. So that allows it to be very unique. Krista was telling me people would come from Florida and walk in and go, "Wow, I can't imagine seeing this in a conservatory." They're used to seeing it outside. The tropical dome, if you've stepped in there, it's like experiencing the rainforest. It's such a great opportunity to be immersed. The high humidity, the warmth, something we so long for all year, but especially in the winter. Amanda Garchow is the horticulturist for the Tropical Dome. And I want to give a shout out to all of the people involved in managing the gardens and making it beautiful for all of us. There are over 1,200 species of plants in the tropical dome, and they represent a rainforest. You've got the forest floor, the understory, the canopy, and the emergent layers. And again, because the domes are so tall, you can have that emergent layer of plants. Every time you go to the dome, something different is in bloom. The orchid was just finishing up when I was there in December. The blue ginger has been blooming for a while, and the coral felthorn, sorry, was in bloom earlier. So it's just a wonderful place to see. Every time I go, there's something different to see. Cardinal's Guard, which is a Pachystachys, you may have tried to grow the one in the middle, sometimes called the golden shrimp plant. And here it's showing with the fringed hibiscus, the middle display. These are plants that I've grown as potted plants, overwintering the hibiscus indoors, some years with success, some years not so much. But you see the golden shrimp plant often used in containers. So something that you may go, oh, I've grown that. And here it's growing year round as a perennial. And then the vase plant is a type of bromeliad, and there's several different genera in that group. Those are epiphytes that are anchored to trees. They're not parasitic. They use their roots to hang on to the trees. They capture moisture and leaf litter to get their nutrients and water. And the vase plant, I've been visiting the domes a few times this fall, and it's always been blooming, kind of fading now, but it's always fun. Bromeliads are easy plants to grow indoors, enjoy a long season of bloom. If you've been down to Florida, I was lucky enough to visit Key West last year and saw some clerodendron in bloom. This is a beautiful, huge specimen. You can grow some clerodendron in as potted plants, even in the north, out in the summer and in the winter. But how to experience a tree size and the beautiful blooms. The number of people stopping to take pictures when this was in full bloom, and even my grandkids had to ask what that plant was. Now, in the domes, you're going to see a lot of plants you've probably grown. Anthurium is one of my favorite. It's an epiphyte, often planted in potting mix. It's a great, easy to grow plant, blooms for a long period, and those red heart-shaped part of the plant is actually a bract, and the part sticking up the spadix has a light fragrance, and it's the part of the true flower. You can grow it indoors in a bright, indirect light. You can water thoroughly, allowed to go somewhat dry between waterings. It's very tolerant of benign neglect, I found out, and it will rebloom for you. If you're interested in flowering plants, I'll be doing a webinar on it, but lipstick plant is one some of you may have grown. It's fun to see. You could see why it gets the name lipstick plant. It likes high humidity. It can take it a little bit consistently moist when it's actively growing. It tends to bloom spring into fall. The variegated peace lily. You've probably seen tons of peace lilies in hotels and shopping malls. This is a variegated variety, excellent for bright light, low light conditions where it keeps flowering for you. So it's one of those plants needs to be kept moist. So you've got to give it some good TLC. If you go to the tropical dome, there are fish. I had to laugh. Dawn, who works with me, was putting some of the final touches on, and she changed out my croton picture so we could see the fish and the frog sculpture. And the crotons are the ones in the upper left, a plant that brings beautiful color to the domes year round, but also you can grow it in your home in good bright light, warm conditions, and avoid drafts. So often we can get a preview of what those plants we buy at the garden centers, tiny little transplants, are going to grow into. The Chinese evergreen, you'll notice, is one of the ground level type plants in the tropical dome because it tolerates lower light. It's very tolerant of benign neglect. It's a very good plant. There's tons of varieties out there. The more light, the better the variegation. But again, a great office low light plant. Now, one of the fun things I find about the tropical dome is seeing plants we've grown but they have such ideal conditions that they flower. So often you won't see your house plants flower because they're not in their ideal conditions, and sometimes they flower because they're under stress. The plant on the left is a Thai plant, cordyline, and you may have grown it as vertical interest or a thriller in a container or as a house plant, sensitive to fluoride. So you often get those brown tips. So distilled water or catching rainwater works well. And on the right, a philodendron. Who knew, right? To see what a blooms of the philodendron look like. And jungle boogie is a variety that you can find at specialty retailers. Now, one of the things is I love some of the fun plants. And when I get to talk about the plants of the domes and the things that make it world class are the unique plants. And the sausage tree is one of my favorite. Now, it looks like a sausage, but it is not edible by people, but it is edible by the animals in Africa tend to use it as a food source. Now, this plant is pollinated by bats. And you can see a little bit if you look closely at the image on the left. There are some flowers. They bloom at night. That's why the bats pollinate it. And then they form this fruit. Now, there aren't bats in the dome, so don't worry if you go in there. So I was talking to Amy, who manages the domes, the tropical dome, and I asked her, so do you get up on a ladder? What do you do? Well, there's a catwalk along the outside of the dome, and she said usually she can reach the flowers there to pollinate, but they have brought a forklift in as well. And so, those are the fun things that happen at night we don't get to see. The calabash tree is an unusual one for us. Native, and you can see I've tried to identify where these plants are native to take you on that travel around the world. The West Indian cultures use this very similar to gourds. So they'll hollow out the fruit and they'll use them as bowls and things like that. They'll make instruments out of them. They also use the fibers to make ropes and twine, and the wood to make handles for tools or for tools themselves. These are the fruit here are very high up, and I was doing some reading, and it said, oh, they need to be pollinated. They're somewhat self-fertilized. They'll produce fruit better if they're cross-pollinated. But Amy was telling me that these really are well, that there's no problem. And it's Amanda. I'm sorry. I keep giving Amy credit. She's the horticulture manager. So Amanda, who runs the tropical dome, was telling me these are pretty good at self-pollinating and they haven't had to intercede with pollination and they get plenty of fruit every year. So the coffee plant, something I depend on, and many of us do, a lot of these plants, we have a relationship, right? So every cup of coffee you drink, that that coffee was developed or made from the beans of the coffee tree, originally in Africa, but it has been, grown in other areas, Costa Rica and a lot of other tropical places. So these plants need to be 3 to 5 years old before they'll start flowering and fruiting, and it takes 6 to 9 months for that fruit to develop. So if you think about it, you've got to have the right climate, you've got to have patience because that's a long time to wait for a harvest and for the harvest to mature. So these are insect pollinated. And Amanda was telling me that they get enough fly-in insects. I've never noticed when I visited. They're not annoying. They're concentrating on the flowers, but they get enough insects that end up in the domes that do the pollination on these plants, the coffee and others that need insect pollination. Another one of my favorites is the vanilla bean orchid. And I never knew until I started visiting the domes years ago that vanilla beans that it came from an orchid plant. And what's unique about this is the orchid produces flowers in the winter. And Amanda was telling me that it's a pretty reliable bloomer. They get flowers every winter. Each individual flower only lasts one day and then it's gone. Now, the bee that naturally pollinates it due to climate change, that bee's habitat has shifted. So now vanilla needs to be pollinated by hand. So if you think about it, the people who are growing vanilla have to pollinate by hand. It takes 10 months for a bean to mature before it can be harvested. So think about this is why vanilla is the second most expensive spice after saffron because of the labor intensity in the long term from flowering to harvest. Makes you appreciate the cost of that bottle of vanilla extract. Bananas, every time you eat a banana. Now, most of the bananas we're eating are hybrids that have been developed for good productivity. And bananas are often called trees, but they're really an herbaceous perennial, meaning they die back to the ground. Now, they send out rhizomes, so they grow in a colony like you see on the right. And so the plant takes about 9 to 12 months to flower, and then it'll fruit. And once the fruit ripens, then that plant dies back, but it sends up new growth. And you can see some of the little ones behind it that are taking off and starting to grow to replace those that will die back after they fruit. And then coconuts. I have a link on the handout. I have a lot of links on more information because I figure a lot of you are gardeners and might be interested and maybe not familiar with these plants. And the coconut palm, there was an interesting article from the New York Botanic Garden, and in their closing, they talk about having the largest coconut palm. I think we need to correct that. Information. But coconuts take 11 to 12 months to reach maturity. And again, these are pollinated, these are self-pollinating. The insects will take care of it. So they don't have to hand pollinate it. So the insects come in, take care of the pollination, and you can watch them mature. You probably know that immature coconuts have the water in the middle. So that's used as a drink, supposedly very healthful. full of antioxidants. As that coconut matures, it turns into meat. And you know what the coconut meat is used for, oils and flavoring and other kinds of things that we use coconut for. So it's a fun one to watch as it goes from green to brown and mature. But there's always something to see. This was my last visit, the middle of January, and the white elephant palm was blooming. So the flowers are at the base of the plant. So when you go through the tropical dome, really keep your eyes open. I always find a plant I never noticed, something blooming for the first time for me to see it. And so there's always something new to see. So, Amanda, thank you for your handiwork. The Desert Dome is managed by Justine Miller. There are over 600 to 1,000 plants from a variety of desert regions on 5 different continents. So think about all of that variety that you can visit as you walk through the dome. The Asian collection is their newest collection available. And I think one of the exciting things is you go and you see where these desert plants, some of the similarities, some of the unique features from the various continents where you can find them. The Domes has the largest Madagascar island plant collection in the US and possibly in the world under glass. And when you walk into the dome, when the vincas are blooming, you probably recognize this as annual vinca, Madagascar vinca. We grow it as a container plant, great for heat and drought. Just a wonderful, beautiful plant. And it's kind of a welcome to the desert dome when it's in bloom and welcome to the Madagascar island plant collection. One of the things I love to do is watch people go into the desert dome in the winter and are surprised by how cool it is because deserts are defined by the amount of rainfall, 10 inches or less typically, not by temperature. And if you think about it, a lot of deserts cool off in the winter. And if you run your house plants, your succulents a little drier and a little cooler in the winter, you'll often be rewarded with flowers like you see on the jade plant here. For some fun, the Tongaland cycad has been blooming for quite a while, and there are 2 flowers here. A very unique plant, and just one you could grow if you could find the plant, and I've seen a few for sale, but beautiful to come and visit. You don't have to take care of it. I think one of the things the Desert Dome says to me is plant adaptation. Think about deserts, lack of water. These plants have to be tough. So we know that succulents and cacti and succulents do have a way of conserving moisture and retaining and storing moisture, like the golden barrel cactus on the left. The Galapagos prickly pear cactus is one I just kind of paid attention to this past year, and it's very tall and upright with a very thorny stems, and the pads are up high. And there's a sign that talks about this is the plant's adaptation. It's native to the Galapagos Islands, and it developed the growth habit this way to keep the turtles from eating it, so they can't bite into that prickly stem. So plants are pretty amazing when we think about it. And a lot of your cacti and succulents have lots of hairs and spines, and part of it is protection from predators, but it's also a way to conserve moisture and provide some shade for the plant. When we think of saguaro cactus, you may think of those with the arms. Well, those are 75 to 100 years old. This saguaro cactus in the domes is 20 years old. And if you were gardening or paying attention to environmental issues in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of saguaro cactus rustling. People were stealing them out of the desert and selling them to people for their landscapes. Think about that, 75 to 100 years old. Pretty amazing. And this one's pollinated by the white-winged dove. I also think about the food sources, not only in the tropical, but also in the desert dome. The prickly pear is native. There's a species native to every one of the 48 lower US states. So, prickly pear, the pads are eaten, the fruit are made jams and jellies. Agaves, fibers, and other resources they provide, but you probably know it as tequila. The blue agave is the only agave species that can be sold as tequila. Mezcal, you can have several different varieties. And there's a post on link to more information on that. The plant on the left, you probably think, oh, California poppy. So we've moved into the Western North America portion of the desert dome. Beautiful flowers. We often don't think about that when we go to the desert. And this one is an annual or short-lived perennial. You could even grow it in the north, but you'd need to start it from seeds for a spring bloom and often will reseed. The sisal on the right is a unique plant. After it reaches 8 to 10 years, it flowers, it will fruit, and then the plant dies back. But it does form little bulblets, little plantlets along the flowering stems, and those drop to the ground to start new plants. So it's sad to see an 8 to 10 year old plant die, but it's pretty amazing to see how it reproduces. The bird of paradise on the left is just starting to bloom. So if you're planning a visit, be sure it's right along the pathway. I kind of missed it because I'm used to the bird of paradise with the larger flat leaves. But this one has narrower leaves, and it's the most cold hardy of the bird of paradise. On the right is the octopus aloe. And just a unique plant. I've grown some smaller versions, but it's wonderful again to see those blossoms. Plan a visit several times throughout the year, but especially during Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. This is the celebration when souls of our ancestors are brought home to their home for us to reunite for that special few day celebration. And you may notice a lot of marigolds in this celebration. Well, the feeling is that it's that fragrance, or maybe I said the scent or smell of the marigold that helps guide the souls of the dead to meet with the living. It's a wonderful celebration. Hopefully, you can join the big event, but if not, tour through the domes right around there and enjoy the display. The show dome, there are 5 different shows throughout the year. Emily Lambrick is the florist, the horticulturist in charge of the floral dome. And if you think about this, how amazing, we think about changing out our garden and maybe a few annual beds. They're changing out a big portion of this show dome 5 times a year. So they have to be creative. This is the train show that's happening right now that Krista mentioned. It's very exciting to see how they've train plants to look like miniature landscapes to support the train show. And it is exciting. It's the wonders of the world are being displayed throughout. And it's a great one for all family members. This was last year's train show that featured space issues as well as trains. The spring show, I think we're always looking for that, some welcome color. Some plants we can grow, some that are not hardy here, but really a sign that spring has arrived. You probably recognize our spring flowering bulbs, cyclamens, hydrangeas, Easter lilies. The summer show, you'll see a lot of plants that you may be growing in your garden displayed in unique ways to inspire and give you ideas that you could do in your own garden, just as the fall show does. I try to visit the shows several times because they change. And my team and I did our team meeting at the domes. It was a nice break. We're usually Zooming from our homes. And I visited the dome the week before, and it was amazing the change in just that week. So plan to visit often if you can. But again, some popular fall plants and things to inspire. The holiday show, this was this past holiday season. Of course, poinsettias, other plants. The theme was the 12 days of Christmas, and usually a holiday tree is one of the center features. In the winter, the holiday show of 2024, they featured different holiday celebrations, which I thought was great. Kwanzaa on the left, Hanukkah on the right, Advent, and a few others throughout the domes. Now, if you have problems with light flashing, close your eyes for a minute because there's this wonderful light display to music at the show dome. So it's really fun. It's an opportunity to kind of experience the domes in a different way. And you get to experience with lights as well as the music. And visiting the domes at night is just a whole different experience. So try to experience that as well. Now, around the show domes, the temperate zone collection, temperate plant collection often gets overlooked, right? Because we're all focused on the show. But Michelle Pianola is responsible for that as well as the exterior gardens. And so you'll find temperate plants and subtropical plants like the poet's jasmine, which can be grown in milder climates. And I have hardiness in the handout, but also as a container plant for those of us in the north. You may have grown black-eyed Susan. This is a relative, the Thunbergii grandiflora. And I have grown this as a potted plant in the past, occasionally find it at garden centers. Full sun, a little afternoon shade, and consistently moist soil. But look at those beautiful blooms. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow plant. Our friends checking in from the south may have these growing in their landscapes. You could try to grow it in a container. But again, there's always something different in bloom in this part of the domes. The other thing I love to do is look at how plants are related. Usually we look at plants from their flower structure, and that tells us they're related. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh, this has to be a kufia, like cigar plant, or a candy cane plant, but it's not even relate. It's not even in the same genus. It's a Sismandii. I have seen some of these for sale, so they like good bright light and consistently moist soil. But hey, you don't have to take care of it if you visit it at the domes. One of the things that Michelle is doing is trying to build in a more permanent collection of medicinal and culinary herbs from various temperate and some tropical plants. Society garlic was blooming this fall. Doing a little research, it is edible. And in Florida, they use this as a ground cover. So, again, a chance to look for plants and some of the history. The exterior gardens, which she's also responsible for, are water wise and pollinator friendly. If you know Pete Udoff, a famous landscape designer, or Roy Diblick, you can see the same kind of look, a mix of cultivated and native plants that provide year round interest and grow well together. Where do all those plants come from? Well, we saw a little peek at the transition dome, but there are greenhouses, new greenhouses near the domes, and that's where they grow the plants for the show dome. And they also do some overwintering of tropicals for the Berner Botanical Gardens. Lee Chybowski and John Harrigan are the horticulturists and greenhouse growers. And Amy, I guess that's why I brought up her name earlier, is the horticulture services manager. So she works with all the horticulturists to keep things going. Doris Mackey is the director of the Mitchell Park Domes on the plant side of things. And I thought it was a good way to wrap up this portion of it because for her, she has the same vision that the county did. She feels what makes the domes a world-class conservatory is the extensive and diverse plant collections that continue to bring people together for over 60 years to celebrate nature, culture, and community, just as Krista had mentioned. I'm going to do some plugs for the domes. Join the events. This is the annual gala. If you go, say hi to me. I am there. I'm signed up and ready to go. It's a wonderful event to visit the domes, visit with others, and enjoy. Spark at the Domes is for people with memory issues and their caretakers. We know how good we feel when we're immersed in nature. Well, this is a chance for the people that take care of those with memory challenges and the people with the challenges to enjoy nature and support each other. Steampunk, fun event. I went a couple years ago. I'm hoping to make it this year. If you're into kind of that, steampunk thing, it's great. One of the cool things that the Domes is doing is their programs, their field trips and programs are bilingual, so they are accessible to everyone. This is Mr. Pete and team from the part of the team from the Education Center. And so they do bilingual story time, wacky Wednesdays. They have puppets. It's a small space, as Krista mentioned, but it's packed full of a lot of learning opportunities. Please consider joining the Domes. Not only do you have free admission throughout the year at the Domes, but to over 360 botanic gardens, arboreta, and conservatories. So as you travel or if you live in another place, you can support our Domes as theirs. Check out my website. This is the start of webinar season and appearances, so please join me if you can. And we're doing the library program again with Kelly hosting and servicing the public libraries of Wisconsin and the UP of Michigan, but everyone is welcome. And I always like to end my talks with asking you to help me grow gardeners. Well, in this case, help us grow gardeners. The two on the left, well, these are all my grandsons, three of the four. And we were visiting on Martin Luther King Day, and Roy took a shoulder ride from Caden, and Santi on the right was visiting the education center with his older brother, who took the pictures but not involved. It is exactly as Krista said, a chance for them to touch and experience and be hands-on because those kids get have a lot of energy, and it's a great place not only to use some of that energy, but learn something as well. And so I would like to just say thank you to the Milwaukee Public Library for hosting. Kelly always is very accommodating and helpful, and Krista for sharing her expertise. And so I will quit sharing my screen, and we both can take questions if people have them.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Melinda, for that wonderful overview. And thank you again, Krista, for helping everyone imagine the future of the domes.
Yeah.
We've really experienced the past, present, and future of a beloved landmark. So we do have questions in the Q&A. And I just shared a reminder in the chat. If you have questions for Krista and Melinda, please put them in the Q&A and we will answer them one by one. Um, we'll start with our first question from Brent. Brent is asking, why were the reflecting pools at the entrance removed?
It was because of the maintenance costs involved. So, and thank you, Melinda, for showing the beautiful gardens that are outside of the domes because I mean, even though it's not the reflection pond, it is still a wonderful and low cost way that we can celebrate nature.
Thank you, Krista. Our next question is from Martin. Martin is sharing one of our favorite amenities at the domes was the Milwaukee Winter Farmers Market in the greenhouse. Is it possible for that to come back?
I certainly hope so, Martin. That was a goal of mine. I will say I keep a list of how many times I'm asked about, things that used to be at the domes that are no longer there. So Music Under Glass is another fan favorite in addition to the Winter's Farmers Market. And, that is part of having more space. It would allow us to bring back some of those amenities that we've lost over the years. And so I would say with the Domes Reimagined, one of my favorite parts is that, yes, it is reimagining the facility and the amenities, but it also is reimagining how we do programming and how we invite the community to come in and enjoy the conservatory. And so a lot of those new amenities we'll have is in the form of programming like the Winter's Farmers Market.
Thank you, Krista. Sally is saying the rendering looks like the Nature Learning Center is a standalone building. Will it be attached to the dome structure?
Good question.
Yeah, Sally, great question. It will be, yes, through a kind of a outdoor walkway that will attach to, if you guys are familiar with the conservatory, there's those growing greenhouses that are in the back, kind of on the east side. And the last greenhouse there is an event space. So if you've been to, or the gala will actually be in that space. So if you are coming to the gala, you'll get to see it. But it is a beautiful, it actually is a functioning greenhouse, but we use it for events. And there's an entryway right there that will be very close to where that new building will be. And that will allow people to walk just a short distance outside in a protected area to get to the rest of the facility.
Thank you. Our next question is from Stephanie. Stephanie's wondering, what are the projected dates of completion for the phases?
That is a great question. So, as I mentioned before, we would start no sooner than April of 2027, no later than December of 2028. That is our contract with the county. And the first phase, which will include a lot of those new amenities that we've discussed, the cafe, the larger gift shop, that will be done in 2 years. So if you, depending on when that start date is, it would be no more than 24 months after that. At that point, we will do a grand reopening. So we'll invite you to come in and see everything new that we've added, and then we will move to the other two domes and continue with the restoration process. So there will always be a portion of the domes open even during construction. So even that initial phase, you'll still be able to access the desert dome and the tropical dome.
Thank you. Our next question is from Jenny. Jenny says it was mentioned that the new kids area will be where plants are put to grow, correct? I love the kids area idea, but I'm wondering where the plants will instead grow.
Yeah, so there are six growing greenhouses that are right in that row. So a lot of times they're kind of tucked back there, so you maybe didn't see them before, but next time if you take a peek on the east side of the facility, you'll see that they're back there. And we'll use, our growing greenhouses for that purpose.
Mm, thank you. Susan is asking, will the existing education center remain?
Yes, it will certainly remain. We might even add a second education space that would be in the lobby itself. So that's the current plan. We're right now in what is called schematic design. And I should give a shout out to our architects, TKWA. I mean, they've been such great partners with us, and those architectural renderings that you saw earlier were from them. But we're figuring out exactly what that would look like. But absolutely, there will always be that education space. But some of the activity that's currently happening there will shift to the Little Sprouts Dome. So as you saw with Melinda's photos of her grandchildren, that a lot of that kind of hands-on activity will shift over to that space.
Great, thanks, Krista. And we have another question about the timing of the improvements. Chris is asking, when will phase one begin?
So phase one would begin no sooner than April of 2027, no later than December 2028.
Thank you, Krista. All right. We've got some folks just sharing thanks to both of you for this wonderful presentation. All right. Dawn is asking, how often did the evening events take place? My grandkids and I love them and would like if they were offered maybe quarterly.
So we do offer a couple member-only evening events. So as Melinda mentioned, our membership is a great deal. It starts at $30, gets you year-round access to the domes and also other gardens across the country. But beyond that, we do offer some evening events, like, the gala is an example of one of them. But we have, even in December, there's oftentimes just evening hours where you can come and enjoy the domes at night and experience the light show that Melinda kindly showed. It is really actually pretty spectacular. If you have not seen the light show, the next time you see that we're offering evening hours, be sure to join us because it's a really unique way to see the conservatory.
I took my daughter, my grandkids, and we went to the preview because we're members and she's a member, and it was a household membership of $65, and she's got four kids, so it was a real good deal. But we did the preview, and we had Coco, and we saw the light show, and there was David Drake playing five, six different instruments. So my 15-year-old grandson was very excited. The little guys were excited. It was a wonderful family event, and it was at night. So that is another benefit of being a member is you get some of those sneak peeks too.
Absolutely. We've got a comment in the chat from Mark Teeks, who is one of
Yes.
the conservatory's former directors. Mark says the reflecting pools were designed into the domes to cool the tropical and show domes in the summer by drawing air across the water and injecting the air into the domes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, shout out to you, Mark. I
Yeah,
know we've met, and it's
yeah,
great that you could join us tonight.
thank you. All right, we'll get back to our questions here. Question from Brent. Brent says, I've enjoyed buying unique orchids that you can't get from local garden centers from the Dome's gift shops.
Oh, good
Well,
point.
yeah. Will there be more plants for sale with the expanded gift shop?
I'm almost afraid to share this with you because honestly, our gift shop sells these unique orchids that I mean, you were right, Brent, you can only buy them there. I mean, some of them are not available anywhere else because they're created just for the domes by members of the Wisconsin Orchid Society.
Wow.
They're so special and so beautiful. And I have asked them, could we get two or three times that many because we almost sell out immediately. I mean, we when we get a new shipment, they won't last 2 weeks. And of course, they're growing them all for us. So, it's a very, you know, it's a difficult process and it takes a bit. So I would love to say that yes, we'll certainly have orchids available. I'd love there to be 3 times as many, but I also don't want to make it any less special than what it currently is. So we'll figure that piece out. But our plant collection that we sell in the gift shop is beautiful. They're really good quality plants and they're, fairly inexpensive. So yeah, make sure you take a little piece of nature home with you when next time you join the domes.
Thank you, Krista. And we've got a wonderful comment from NS. They say, congratulations for your vision for the Domes Reimagined. I love the events happening along the year. I cannot wait for the cafe.
I'm with
Me too.
them too.
Uh, We've got a housekeeping question from Martin. Martin is asking, will this recording be available on your website? So yes, we are recording this and then we will add it to the Milwaukee Public Library YouTube channel. And then in our follow-up email, we will email the link to it. I know Melinda puts a link on her website as well. And we encourage you to explore Milwaukee Public Library's YouTube channel, I guess I want to say back catalog of programs. Melinda has hosted a number of wonderful gardening and horticulture programs for Milwaukee Public Library, libraries everywhere, and everyone everywhere because they're accessible at any time. So you can binge to your heart's content all of those programs, and this will be added to it. So thank you for asking, Martin.
And tell your friends to check it out too that missed tonight because getting the scoop
Mhm.
from Krista, I can hear this several times and I always pick up something new.
Absolutely. All right, our next question is from Aaron. Aaron says, new domes at the old Northridge site. Hmm?
Well, we could always add new domes other places, but I will tell you we're pretty committed to our 125-year history of having a public conservatory in Mitchell Park. So that's one thing. I know a lot of people have asked that, oh, well, maybe we take it out here or we put it here. And we're really committed to our home base. And that's why a lot of the investments we're making are in Mitchell Park itself. So it's not just the domes, but adding new amenities back into the park.
Thank you, Krista. Got a question from Susan. Susan's wondering, is there any recycling or repurposing ideas for the removed glass from the domes? And thank you, and need to get back there. It's a great question.
So we actually used to use the glass to create unique items that we would sell in the gift shop, believe it or not. Our gift shop manager is all sorts of creative, and we we really want to think about doing things like that in the future. So I'm, hopeful that when we get to a point where we're really launching a fully public capital campaign, that there'll be opportunities for you to take a piece of the domes with you home and just have that part of the history, um, be part of this campaign. So yes, certainly that's our intention, our interest. And we will look for other purposes because there are lots of glass. Yeah, we'll have lots of glass that we'll be dealing with. And unfortunately, not anything we can do in terms of that, but certainly we can find other ways to reuse, recycle, repurpose.
It's great. Thank you. Question from Jenny, is a parking lot update planned?
Yes, so we will just do a standard update of our current. We have 3 lots, and so a lot of folks don't realize that there's a lot it's kind of in the more northeastern corner. And I only tell you that because, as Melinda said, you drive around during the train show on a Saturday and you're like, no parking, but you get to it through a little service road and it's not very noticeable. So, part of the Domes Reimagined is we're going to have a lot more signage and help, wayfinding, both within the park itself, but also wayfinding within the domes so that you'll get to better know what you're looking at and experiencing. So, we're definitely going to incorporate elements like that. We also will be repaving the current parking lots because they're not in great shape. So, that's all part of the plan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Krista. And just a reminder, if you have questions for Krista and Melinda, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Just to share a couple of reminders, this is being recorded. We'll email that link to you within a few days. We'll also email Melinda's handout. And Krista, I think we had a question from someone wondering about your slides. I think you put it in the chat that people can email you for those. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, I did put
Okay.
that. It's C Beal, Beall. So C is in Krista, and then Beal
Mhm.
at MilwaukeeDomes.org. You can also find my email address under our staff page on our website, MilwaukeeDomes.org. But you're welcome to reach out and I will send you that slide deck. And then I know Melinda put together a whole packet for you as well that will be sent. So thank you, Melinda, for putting together
Okay.
those resources.
Thank you both. So we'll include Krista's email in our follow-up email, so you can reach out to her for that. And just want to thank everyone who attended this
Yes.
evening. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. I'm not seeing any more questions. So Krista and Melinda, are there any other final parting words that you'd like to share with everyone here?
I'm going to be the promoter here because Krista's doing the, correct thing. But this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I grew up in Ohio and we have a conservatory, but nothing like the domes. And when I travel and go to another conservatory, people say, well, it's not the domes. We're not as big as the domes. And every conservatory has something to offer, but we have the domes. And so if you're not from here, please stop by and take advantage. As Krista mentioned, if you are from here, come often. There's always something to see. And as Krista mentioned, we need that hope and that vision and that green relief and that green care always, but especially now.
Thank you, Melinda. I just want to say thank you again to everyone who attended tonight. Thank you to Kelly for putting this on and to, help expand our reach. We really appreciate it. And thank you to Melinda for, I always learn things from you too. So I appreciate you saying you learned stuff from me, but I certainly learn about our plants from you, which I love. So thank you for being so knowledgeable and such a great advocate.
My pleasure.
Thank you both so much. And thanks to everyone who attended this
Oh,
evening.
yes.
Watch for that follow-up email. We will send that within a few days. And keep an eye out for Melinda's upcoming webinars. As she mentioned, we have quite a few in the
Yes.
pipeline. And so we are excited for spring and summer and the growing season. So we will see you next time, and we'll see you at the domes, I'm sure. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and check out Milwaukee Public Library's YouTube channel for this recording very soon. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.